According to a major exclusive report from CNN, federal prosecutors have filed criminal charges against New York Republican lawmaker George Santos. He's expected to appear at federal court in New York's Eastern District tomorrow, Wednesday, where the specific charges were filed under seal. And while we don't know the exact charges yet, we do have quite a bit of information that we can glean from. For example, we know that the Justice Department had asked the Federal Election Commission, the FEC, which was investigating apparent issues on George Santos's filings, to hold off on any enforcement against Santos, which indicates pretty clearly that the DOJ had opened a criminal investigation into the congressman. The FEC regularly complies with DOJ requests to hold off on enforcement, given that the FEC is a civil agency and they're not looking to complicate any active criminal cases within the DOJ. That probe almost certainly centers on the mysterious $700,000 personal payment that George Santos claims to have loaned his campaign. And why is it mysterious? Well, remember, this is a guy who is wanted in Brazil for having stolen a checkbook to buy clothing. Not exactly someone who you might expect to just have an extra $700,000 lying around. A guy who we know lied about working for Goldman Sachs and Citigroup. Again, doesn't exactly bode well for your financial health when you've been caught lying about 2 jobs. According to reporting in the Daily Beast, Santos paid himself a $750,000 salary from the Devolder organization. But if that corporation was just created as a dummy corp so that dark money groups could fund his campaign, then that's illegal not just for him, but for those who use this scheme to siphon funds to him. And if, by some miracle, the Devolder organization is a legitimate corporation, well, you also can't just use corporate funds to fund a campaign. Of course, there is always the possibility that this was all on the level, because if there's one thing that we know about George Santos, it's that he values honor and integrity and the truth. I'm sorry, couldn't even finish that sentence. But if by chance the $700,000 loan isn't what the federal charges are for, well, don't worry, because that's not the only issue with George Santos's finances. The Santos campaign expenditure filings show 37 expenditures for the exact same amount, $199.99, which just so happens to be exactly 1 penny below the dollar figure, above which the FEC requires campaigns to keep receipts. Those expenditures were apparently for Uber, Walgreens, Walmart, Best Buy, Delta Airlines, and more. And look, maybe it just so happens that George Santos had a coincidental penchant for spending exactly a penny below $200, or he was very sloppily and very lazily skirting FEC requirements to purposefully break the rules. But hey, if anyone deserves the benefit of the doubt, it's probably the guy who claimed that his own mother died on at least 2 separate occasions. Now, in terms of why it's important that the DOJ is taking the lead on this case and not the FEC, note that the FEC is a largely toothless agency, and that is by design. Mitch McConnell made sure that of the 6 FEC commissioners, the 3 Republicans would be diametrically opposed to the actual mission of the agency. And so what's followed in the next decade plus was an FEC that failed to enforce the law against both Republicans and Democrats and hold them accountable for flagrant violations. And that comes at a time when spending, and dark money spending in particular, has increased exponentially. In other words, a combination of outside groups pouring dark money into politics and a political party hell-bent on ensuring no regulation or oversight has left us with an enforcement agency largely unwilling to actually do much enforcement. So if there is illegal activity happening in the Santos campaign, the agency you want taking the lead on it is definitely the Justice Department, and this yet-to-be-seen indictment is exactly why. But what's especially stunning is that this isn't the only legal issue that George Santos is contending with right now. He's also being scrutinized by the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, regarding his role in Harbor City Capital, which was an investment firm that was shut down in 2021 for operating as a Ponzi scheme that raised over $17 million from more than 100 victims. And while George Santos himself wasn't named in the lawsuit against Harbor City, he did work for the firm at the same time that its assets were frozen, and he's believed to be among those soliciting investments for the firm. I mean, my God, this guy is like a walking smoke signal for fraud. And while the DOJ certainly isn't indicting him for lying, let's not forget the barrage of other lies that have been passed off by George Santos thus far, including the fact that he lied about being Jewish, that he worked for Citigroup and Goldman Sachs, that he was a landlord, that he employed victims of the Pulse nightclub shooting, that his mother died on 9/11, and also that she died 15 years later of 9/11 related causes before we ultimately found out that she wasn't even in the United States on 9/11, that he stole funds intended for a dying dog on GoFundMe, that he dressed in drag in Brazil, that he posted an anti-Semitic and racist screed on Facebook. I mean, my God, somewhere even Donald Trump is like, damn dude, take a day off. And speaking of Trump, it is notable that this revelation came within hours of the news that Trump was found liable of sexual abuse and defamation in the E. Jean Carroll case, marking Trump's second bout of bad judicial news in a matter of weeks, with the other being his indictment in the Manhattan DA case. And it really is telling that 2 of the most prominent members of the quote-unquote law and order party can't manage to stay out of a courtroom for their own illegal activity. Now, in terms of George Santos' future, what's already clear is that George Santos won't resign because you can't shame the shameless, and he's made that abundantly clear on numerous occasions.
Will you step down?
I will not.
Guys, we're going to need a little bit of a little space here.
The New York Republicans are calling you a disgrace.
You will not resign?
Pardon me?
What is your response to New York
Congress is trying to get in
Republicans?
the elevator.
And it's already clear that Kevin McCarthy won't call for an expulsion vote because his sole priority is his and his party's grip on power. But if George Santos is convicted, then it would be up to Congress as a whole to vote to expel him. He wouldn't automatically be expelled even if he ends up in federal prison. And you better believe that if it comes to that, the majority of Republicans would still vote to keep that guy in power because law and order, or something. But the truth is, I'm in no rush to see George Santos resign or expelled, unlike the vast majority of people that you'll listen to, considering George Santos is actually an effective tool for Democrats. He shows pretty damn effectively exactly who the Republicans are. That is a party that is so corrupt, so shameless, so duplicitous, that they can't manage to recruit people who aren't sociopathic liars and criminals. The crazies in that party might be useful in terms of reaching the base, but the vast, vast majority of Americans very rightfully view the George Santoses and Marjorie Taylor Greenes and Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boeberts as fringe lunatics. So if the GOP wants to protect these people, then far be it from us to stop them. They say never to interrupt your enemy while he's making a mistake, and it looks like the GOP signed itself up for one hell of a mistake in protecting George Santos back when they had the chance to cut him loose. For example,
you weren't supposed to win this seat.
I was not supposed to win this seat.
I mean, this was a seat that a lot of folks looked at and said, definitely going Democrat. You know, Republicans, gosh, Santos ran last time. We'll send him to run this time. And you surprised a lot of people.
All the people calling me to resign, I beat them by double their margins in the victory because I outworked every single one of them.
And so when you've got people like Matt Gaetz helping George Santos on his little image rehab tour so that they can beat their chest and rub in this notion that George Santos somehow won, it looks like that might not have been the best strategy after all. Although, I suppose when it comes to MAGA Republicans, rallying around the most electorally toxic people isn't a bug, it's a feature. So obviously there's much more to come as far as this case is concerned, but I'd leave you with this. If accountability can come for someone like George Santos, the first man to scale Mount Everest on a single day, the first man to go into space with no spacesuit, the first man to run a 2-minute mile, then it can come for anybody, proving pretty damn effectively that no one is above the law. Before you go, I need your help. I'm right on the cusp of hitting 2 million subscribers, so please help me grow this channel so the progressive media ecosystem grows by hitting the subscribe button right here on the screen. I also started a Spanish channel so we can finally start regaining some of that lost ground among Spanish speakers, so if you want to help support those efforts, you can hit that subscribe button. And finally, if you listen to podcasts and you want to support mine, you'll find a link to that on the screen as well. Thanks so much for watching.